this is the title we gave to the session. It's about the Rural Pact Coordination Group Declaration and the Future of Rural Development Policy. The question that, of course, interests us, that we've been very actively involved in the development of the declaration as members of the RPCG, and also trying to promote it widely, especially together with the chair of the group, Radim. We are trying to invest in it a lot. At the same time, it's always a question what we manage to achieve with that, and are these declarations really useful at all? So that's why we gave this title, like Turning Words into Action. What can we do that we really turn these words of the declaration into action, or will it just remain another wish list, rural wish list that we have on our list, just like many times before? So this is the question, interests us, and we would like to really reflect on it together. We thought with Smart Village Network members, but of course much beyond that, with any interested Rural Pact members, and we promoted this event widely, and we were very pleased to see that there is great interest. So this is what the motivation was. And just to set the scene, today's session a bit. So here we are with the head of the Smart Village Network Services, which is currently run by E40 Europe. And the Smart Village Network Services itself is also a member of the Rural Pact Coordination Group, as most of you know. Radim Shershan is the chair of that group, and I was very pleased to be elected vice chair. So we are quite active in that group. And I think obviously the main motivation is that we all care about how future rural development policies are shaped, and especially from the rural community's perspective, which is really the perspective we try to represent everywhere. So in that sense, to make the voices of rural communities heard in all these discussions. So that's the ultimate aim of everything that we are doing. So what we thought today to do with you interested stakeholders from all levels, really, that firstly, we would like to share the information on the declaration, that everybody is up to date and you know where we are, what it is, because you are members of this Rural Pact group community, all of you, or hopefully most of you. So we would like to share what's in, or I will share briefly what's in the declaration and why we thought it was important. But as I said at the beginning, we also want to critically reflect on where we are in policymaking and what we can achieve for a better rural development policy. So this is because we will have two perspectives from Ben and hopefully Hannes. I don't know if he managed to join. He had some technical problems in the morning, but we will have two perspectives and then an open discussion, as we usually do at our meetings. We are really just curious what you think and what you take away, and you cannot stay calm because we have some exercises as often. Finally, we want to be quite active on the next steps as well. So we want to plan a bit like what can we do more that the key messages are passing through and do not just remain some words on paper like it often has happened in the past. So we were running a short survey, and thank you for all those 24 people who responded. We were asking you if you knew about the declaration, and it's a very good, before receiving our email, and it's a very good thing that most of you knew about it. I mean, most of the respondents knew about it, but it's also the purpose, if you didn't know about it, to get to know about it, obviously. And most of you also read the declaration at the time of filling out the survey. So that's also good. I think all of you are up to date in that sense, but I will still provide a brief overview of what we think are the important points within that. And what's also a very positive aspect is that most of you indicated that you agree with the statements. Actually, there was one person indicating only partly, but all the others indicated that yes, fully they agree with the statements of the declaration. So let me tell a bit about the background and what this Rural Pact Coordination Group is, in case you are not fully familiar with that. So the group was established by the European Commission in 22 as a special group to help to develop the Rural Pact and steer the whole process further. And the good thing is that it really consists of a very diverse set of European governmental, actually not just non-governmental, so non-governmental organizations, but also civil society, business organization, public authorities, representing also the presidency countries in an ongoing way, in a continuous way, academia, research, members of the ERP, and we will hear from Ben today from ERCA, the European Parliament, the Committee of the Regions, European Economic Social Committee, and as I mentioned, the trio of the EU presidencies, so the past, the current, and the upcoming presidency. So you can see it's a really mixture of members. And this group was requested by the Commission because the Commission is supporting the work of the group, and of course the Rural Pact Support Office, Pascal is here from the Rural Pact Support Office, is also supporting the work of this group, but it's still an independent group, and the Commission was requesting us to respond to the 9 questions of the long-term vision for rural areas report review report. There were 9 questions set. So this is how the declaration came about. It started in the summer of 2024. And we developed it on the basis of members' input. So it was really a participatory process. We asked the members to fill out a survey and respond to the specific questions. But later on, we didn't quite keep that structure, but a much more streamlined structure. And of that diverse group that I showed you, like 76% actually actively contributed in one way or another, either in person or writing to this declaration. So we really believe the findings are quite representative of those perspectives. And finally, the declaration was adopted in December 2024. And since then, we really invest quite a lot to actively promote the findings and to help to transfer the messages into the EU policy making. So the declaration structure is, as you can see on this screen. So we've got 6 blocks beside the preamble of the declaration. So the first one is on the future of rural areas, and stressing that it's not just a concern of rural people, but everybody, essentially. The second one is about rural challenges, highlighting the challenges and the urgent needs of rural areas. The third one is how future rural development policy should respond to this, and it's kind of a call that the needs of rural areas are taken much more seriously than in the past. The fourth one are some suggestions on how to turn the long-term rural vision into a concrete strategy and how to realize in the implementation the so-called Rural Pact model. The fifth is on building capacity and local ownership at the very local level, which is obviously a serious concern for the Smart Village Networks work as well. And then the sixth one is how to improve the monitoring on EU spending. So these you will find, and if you've read, you saw that there are specific statements under each. And I will just highlight a very few ones. So many members that we have to highlight that, of course, rural areas are places of challenges, but it's also places of opportunities, and they can offer a lot to other types of areas. Actually, they are offering a lot. And because of that, they should be taken seriously. And it's not just the interest of rural areas and communities to be taken care of, but the wider interest of all the people also living in urban areas. So that's a quite strong statement, but still the key challenges are also highlighted in that section. I said it already, this point. And that we also stress that there are serious capacity constraints at the local level. at the same time, there is also lack of access to funds, and often the lack of access to funds is explained by the capacity constraints. But if you heard me speaking at other events, we strongly believe that those capacity constraints shouldn't be a reason to not access funds, but we should find ways for communities to better access different funds. And then there is a very strong focus on the CLLD approach. And actually, the community-led local development approach is like Leader and Smart Villages, and highlighting that we really strongly believe it's underfunded and undersourced in many ways, and not used to their full potential. And there is this call that the future rural policy must take the needs of rural areas more seriously. So this is kind of painting a picture, this section about the future or the current state of rural areas and what they need. There is a special focus, as I mentioned, on CLLD, and in the current period, beside the very valuable leader approach, which is kind of a micro-regional level approach, there is the Smart Villages introduced, as I don't have to explain to you, which really focuses on the local community level, on villages, on local rural communities. And I think we need to monitor and follow closely what's happening there. I will come back to that later on. Just recently, I was keynote listener at a Rural Pact webinar on rural innovation, and one of the key findings from there was that innovation is actually place-based or have to be place-based. And I think we need to keep in mind this kind of statement, which came from the OECD, but not only from many other stakeholders during that webinar, that it's smart villages and leaders should be a source of innovation as well. And that local communities need to take the lead, which is a critical thing. And this is how Smart Villages itself appears directly in the declaration, highlighting that it strengthens local resilience and of rural communities through technological, but also social innovation. And it follows the key principles of CLLD. So in that sense, it belongs to that group of actions and needs more attention. So what are the implications for future policy? And I think this is probably the strongest part of the declaration that I'd like to draw your attention to. Of course, it's quite technical and policy focused, but that's why the declaration is there. So obviously one key and very strong statement that it shouldn't be just rural development policy caring about rural areas, but also other policies. So we really hope that it will be picked up by other DGs in the Commission and other ministries as well, the importance of rural areas, because it cannot be just an isolated policy action. And of course, rural proofing is very important in that sense. The second is that around each programming period, we realize that somehow our voices, the rural voices, are still not strong enough. And I think this is something we would like to discuss today. I think it was Hannes, but maybe others also saying at the last European Rural Parliament meeting that farmers are often on the streets, but the rural stakeholders don't have the tractors to do the same kind of demonstrations. Maybe it's much harder to unite those efforts, the power of those living in rural areas. And I think it shows in the policy negotiations, where we see often much more focus on the agricultural issues, and somehow other rural development issues are more neglected. And I think this is reflected in each policy negotiation round, and it might be the direction this time around, which is kind of what we'd like to avoid, which of course, and I have to stress, that doesn't mean that agriculture is not a critical and crucial part of rural societies, but how we can care about the other parts of rural societies as well. And then there are two quite strong statements, policy statements, and we purposefully put in some figures so that there is a reference point. That what we suggest that there should be a compulsory, and the word compulsory is quite important, because we also saw that as long as it's it's at the discretion of member states to decide how much they allocate to rural development because of the other powers being much more powerful or other interests being much more powerful. Often it's the minimum, the absolute minimum that the Commission sets, for instance, for LEADER, with a few exceptions, of course, in some countries. So what we are stating there, that of all EU funds, so not just the cap, there should be 30% at least allocated to rural development and rural areas. And 10% of funds should be spent through the bottom-up approach, like leaders and smart villages. And of course, it's a bit of a dream. It's very likely there won't be an earmarking of funds this way, but I think it's good to be concrete on the proportions that we would love to see as a starting point in these policies in the future. So the third important thing is that if it's not possible to earmark from across funds, and we know that we don't yet know how the framework will look like, whether there will be separate funds. There were discussions about a single fund, which is, I think, is probably maybe no longer the case, but colleagues from the Commission can correct me later on the latest situation. But if there is no earmarking of all the funds, showing that it's a cross-cutting issue, then alternatively, there could be a dedicated rural development fund, because what we see that within the cap, it's always kind of a fight or a competition, slight competition between agriculture and other rural development priorities, and somehow the other rural development priorities are pushed behind, where we want to take a more territorial, pace-based approach to rural development, and maybe a dedicated fund could reflect that, unless there is this earmarking and tagging of funds later on. So these are the things we have stressed in the context of policies. And of course, if we have this basic framework and compulsory elements for member states that they have to allocate for rural communities and areas that amount of money, then it's, in terms of the specific priorities and design, each member state and each local area is quite different. So there should be flexibility for member states to design their dedicated strategies and programs. Now, in terms of the implementation, what is important that there are rural development strategies at all levels. So, of course, there is the long-term vision at the European level, and there will be the rural action plan. But this should be followed at all levels, at member state level, and of course, the smart village strategies at the lowest community level. And we refer to this Rural Pact implementation model. We know that the Rural Pact is about collaboration between different stakeholders. And there was this very useful publication of the Rural Pact Support Office on how to make the Rural Pact happen in member states. There is also one for the local level. And there are some specific actions mentioned in this document. For instance, that there should be coordination between the different ministries, that there should be a designated government member on Rural Pact and rural development issues, these compulsory interministerial coordination groups and rural proofing. And we suggest in the declaration that these kind of implementation or governance measures should be compulsory for member states to access the funds, the rural development funds, so that we make sure that it's actually happening and not remains just on paper. But of course, different managing authorities need capacity building on how to deal with rural issues. These were the two key things on implementation. And two more points I want to highlight, that of course, as I said at the beginning, the capacity building at the local level is very important, because we know that often there is not enough capacity there. There should be dedicated funding. We specifically say that it's also needed at the stage of preparation of projects, so not just when the projects are ready, but already at the project development phase, there needs to be funding. Of course, much more flexibility, which is often stated in the application process, simplified cost options and so on, which is not a new message, of course. This is what I said, that already seed funding for the preparation and idea development stage. And of course, support for innovation and international exchange, which we are also trying to do through the Smart Village Network. So this is, sorry, I'm jumping sometimes back and forth, but these are the key points at the local level capacity building section of the declaration. And finally, what we also stress there, that it's very important to monitor, not for audit purposes so much as to understand much better like where the money goes, because we also saw in the current period that often it's not tagged. So if we talk about cohesion policy, only a very small proportion is tagged actually, like which type of area is it being spent in. So it's very important that the data is the basis for better understand where the money goes. Is it going to rural areas or other types of areas when we talk about, for instance, cohesion policy, and which sectors it goes to? So much clearer distinction between, not distinction, but understanding, I would say, like when it goes to agriculture, what kind of farms, what type of actions, and when it goes to, when does it go to other types of rural priorities and rural areas. So this is on monitoring. So this was what I wanted to say as a snapshot on the declaration, just to brief you and to summarize to you the key points. And what we'd like to do next is that we have invited two perspectives to tell how they use or what they see in such a declarations. And I will find out in a minute if Hannes Lorenzen is already online or he's still struggling with technical issues. And we also asked Ben Van Essen from the Netherlands to tell his perspective. He's also representing ERCA. I will come back to that in a minute. And then we would like to do a short exercise with you on how you see your role and the usefulness of the declaration. I will explain it in after the two short interventions. And then a free discussion, and we would like to spend some 20 minutes at the end for the next steps. So this is how we will run today's session. So, as I mentioned, we invited two very interesting perspectives. One is from Hannes, who has been very active in rural development policies and speaking up in the interest of rural communities. He's been a senior advisor and also active in Forum Synergies and ARC 2020. And Ben Van Essen from ERCA, and also he is very active in the Rural Pact Coordination Group representing ERCA, but also he has initiated some very specific actions in the Netherlands on making the Rural Pact happen in a national context. So I stopped sharing my screen and I'm checking if Hannes managed to connect. Sorry, I didn't have a chance to. Oh, here you are. I can see you. Perfect. Hannes, then let's start with you. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Edina. Yeah, I had a computer crash yesterday and couldn't fix that. So I'm now in the European Parliament, my former place of work, and the colleagues there helped me to get in contact with you. So yes, very complete, Edina. Thank you very much. Presenting a very interesting and important declaration, and I fully agree with mainly all the points that you are making. I've been from the beginning pretty critical about the way the Commission has dealt with the vision for rural Europe, the whole process. I've been involved in that at some point. And the pact, why? Because it's for me really a way of dealing with the problems and not dealing with the problem. We had for a long time discussions about where rural areas go, what their needs are, and so on. And it has been perfectly documented in the process of the rural vision. And I think it's a wonderful thing that we have the secretariat, very good people supporting. But the main thing is the approach is do it yourself. Do it yourself. Because the Commission is not doing a proper rural development policy. Let's be very frank about it. It has always been a pillar besides CAP. And this second pillar has now in the responsibilities of the commissioner disappeared. The commissioner for agriculture and rural policy doesn't exist anymore. There's a commissioner for agriculture and food. Formerly, that was a commissioner for agriculture and rural development. Now it's a different agenda. And we don't know where it has appeared. It hasn't appeared in any responsibility of other commissioners. So the big question is, where has it gone? Has it gone to the rural pact? Has it gone to cohesion policy? Where has it gone? And we all know the big battle is still in front of us, and that's about the money. You've mentioned a few times in the declaration, Edina, rightly so, the question, where is the money for the things that are needed? I think we all agree on the needs. We have so many times in so many declarations made very clear what is needed. It's the local approach, it's the local capacity, it's the differentiation out for where really the money goes and so on. This is completely unclear now, completely unclear. And it's, of course, very important that we have declarations like this one, or the declaration of Ellard, that leaders should survive. But are we not in a completely defensive situation right now? I mean, we have a complete rollback on the Green Deal. The Green Deal was about a lot of challenges that we mentioned, not only climate change, but about the critical infrastructure. Where is the critical infrastructure? Do you remember the financial crisis we had, where it was always talked that the banking sector is the critical infrastructure for our economy? Where is the critical infrastructure for rural areas? Where are the schools? Well, I won't go into the details. We all know it. We've been singing this song since a long time. But when you read the declaration that Ellard did on leader, it is, please don't make us disappear. It's really I think it's a disastrous kind of situation in which we are. But I want to turn it now to the positive side. I think we have to be aware of this. And it's always nice to make proposals to the commissioner how they could do better. But we have to be aware that with renationalization of common agriculture policy, there is also renationalization of responsibilities in rural areas. Member states are asked to please take care of their rural areas. That's it. What they really put into, the rural areas specifically in their rural development programs, it's their business. The Commission has given a lot of things out of their hands because I think the reason was they were fed up with member states criticizing bureaucracy and criticizing top-down approaches. But LEADER and rural development has mainly been a bottom-up approach that the Commission promoted. And I remember when that started, that regional governments, municipalities, were not at all amused about it because suddenly there was something coming from the bottom up and taking their place in responsibilities. And that hasn't really changed. I mean, there are always, I see Hans Olof, there are always, regions, countries that are a beautiful place for rural development. But it was also because they stood up against the urban politicians to think that everything happens in urban areas. So we just recently had a seminar about the consequences of voltaic installations in rural areas. That's another example where urban areas demand access to rural resources in order to have, it's all fine, renewable energies, but for which purpose? Is that really a purpose for rural areas? I'm just taking that part as, you see it in Germany, there are lots of land is being taken by big companies producing renewable energy. Well, was there any plan? Now it's coming up a little bit, but was there any plan of how the land should be used? The land use, the question of do rural communities really profit from that kind of innovation? And you mentioned that several times, Edina. Innovation is being interpreted just like sustainability in any way, right? So what kind of innovation is it? Where is the social innovation in it? Where is the critical infrastructure that really communities or smart villages need in order to face all the challenges? I do believe that all that has been mentioned in your declaration, that all that rural parliaments have been saying all that time, is correct. The question is, do we get, our voice really heard? And not only heard, where will be the decisions that are going to be made now in the next months about CAP? And there's an interesting, I just opened a bracket, there's an interesting development I saw in Poland, where the Rural Forum just launched the Rural Parliament with a broad range of stakeholders, including farmers. I remember Hans Olof in Sweden, it was against the farmers. It was right from the beginning that the movement said, no, the farmers get their money, we want rural. Now, there's a different situation. It's not only the tractors that were in the streets. It is that people understand in rural areas that they need communication with farmers, and that they have to do a common cause for what's happening in rural areas. That's a new thing I see. And that's super important. Not only dialogue, but a common cause, a common fight, not only for the money, but for recognition of the necessities for the rural areas. Am I going beyond my time? You stop me, Edina, please.
No, that's perfect. Anything else you want to add? Or
well, I think starting from your declaration, and as I mentioned, all the declarations we've heard and developed so far, and starting all the good work of the Rural Pact Secretariat and everything, we are still, being considered as an element that can be ignored. Just remember that now the priority of the European Union is, on the one hand, security that needs a lot of money. And on the other hand, it is competitiveness. And the competitiveness will have a huge impact, this priority on farming. There will be a huge pressure on farmers to get competitive, not on a regional, not on a national, not on a European level, on an international level, right? And then just count the farmers that really can cope with that idea of getting competitive on the world market. So that's a completely different kind of investment. That is a completely different kind of innovation. And if farmers go that way, well, that will be a very small number of farmers. And that has an impact on villages, that has an impact on attractivity of rural areas. And I think this is going to be the key thing. It's not how we defend leader money also, but not only how we defend all the good things that have been developed in smart villages. We have been very, very smart, but I think we have to be much smarter still in order to reach out to the political decision makers in the next months. I wouldn't say even years. Sorry for being wrong.
No, thanks a lot, Hannes. It's perfect and very inspiring. Indeed, that's, I mean, we are just keep reinforcing that we agree with each other's messages. I think he'll open the floor very soon. I think the messages are clear, and I think what we would like to discuss today, and you said already like how we can actually put more pressure or turn it into a different direction, cooperate with farmers, or what to do next as a community to make our voices stronger and to transfer all the messages that you are saying, Hannes, and let's come back to that. But keep your questions to Hannes as well, because we'll open the floor for discussion, so don't forget it. But maybe I first give the floor to Ben to share his perspectives and ideas on this. Ben, please.
Yeah, thanks, Edina, and thanks for inviting me to say a few words in this special company of rural advocates. The question today is whether the Rural Pact Declaration can shape the future of EU rural policy. My answer is yes, it can. But it's up to us to bring this to the level that it is really successful. On the one hand, I think this declaration is a very good outcome of a democratic process where all the members of the RPCG are have been very much involved, and this RPCG, like you mentioned earlier, is a broad company of experts and people that are active on this stage of coming up for the rural issues that are struggling for us. But to make this really happen, and I have a little bit another perspective as Hannes. Let's say I have a very little tractor. I have it myself, but with this little tractor, I think we can still do a lot. And the other thing for me is that even when the situation for the rural areas is at stake and it is in trouble, that's right at the moment that we are asked, and what is our plan to answer to these challenges? And I think there are three things which I would like to mention that are important. Also to realize what is here to do for the next time. The first thing is don't let us not forget the many things that have been achieved since the launch of the long-term vision in June 2021. We are not without any instruments, so I'll come back to that later. The second thing would be, when we talk about rural policy, and I just quote Radim here, we should not only name the problems, but also the solutions and the possibilities that we see, and also the solutions that we can contribute to ourselves, because that would be the third point to make. We are part of the solutions for these troubles. Because we, and I mentioned especially also the smart rural, the villages company or community, the ELART company, community, and of course ERCA, we are in direct contact with the base in the rural communities. So just to come back to these 3 points, since the launch of the long-term vision in 2021, all 30 components which were mentioned there and in the action plan have been implemented. We have tools like the Rural Observatory, the Rural Toolkit, and all that. There is a Rural Pact community which has grown over 3,000 members, and there is a Rural Pact coordination group that makes its voice heard through the declaration. And let's not forget that thousands of LAGs, grassroots initiatives, and smart village groups are active in improving life in local communities. So this work on the basis is happening at the moment. I was last month I was involved in an evaluation of the smart village Hilvarenbeek, and when I look at this smart village, then the results are really astonishing. What they have accomplished in Hilvarenbeek is marvelous, and it's impressive, and that is also because of the support, the leader support, because of being a member of the community of the smart village. So there is a lot of things also to look at it positive, and in kind of a way, perhaps Hannah says it's a bit of do it yourself. Yes, it is. In a bit of a way, but if there are instruments like a toolkit or that, we can also do a lot ourselves, and that is what is happening on the grassroots movements and movements. That's what I see also within ERCA. The second thing is, like Radim mostly states, is we should not only mention that there are a lot of bottlenecks and problems, but there are also solutions. And I am very happy that also the declaration starts with the positive things that we need from the rural areas. But we should be specific about these solutions. And I think that the declaration certainly provides good proposals, but we have to be critical on ourselves. We have to be strict and work further on strong solutions that no one can neglect. In the opinion paper that the steering group from the European Rural Parliament has drawn up, we and partly also on the basis of the declaration, we named 12 recommended actions. So these are also proposals to become concrete in the solutions that we have to work on. But also on this opinion paper, I think we should be, these should also be need to be tightened up. So we should also work on the proposals and solutions that the European Commission cannot neglect in one or the other way. Coming up to the third point, what I mentioned is that we, like the communities that are also present in the smart village community, we are part of the solution, because through these smart villages, through the LAGs, and all these thousands of local action groups that are member of the network of ERCA and Prepare, we have a unique connection with the grassroots. We represent these local communities. We can reach out to them. We are in contact with them. So the European Commission must realize that none of the big challenges of our time can be solved without the active participation of citizens. And we are the ones who can support that active participation on the local, regional, national, and European level. We can and must make a major contribution to making the voice of the countryside heard clearly. The next possibility would be, for me, for instance, on the European Rural Parliament in October in Scotland, where we could meet again with all these communities to make the voice of the rural areas heard, and also to discuss the things that I said, the concrete, the solutions that can help bringing the rural areas forward. So we live in a time of a lot of change, and I think, was it ever else? There are always changes going on, and for me, I am an optimist. Every change is also a chance, I think, and we are the ones. We should be brave to take this in hand. That would be my message. Thank you.